in-house flow checks and calibrations on your MAS NT with your Da100 NT. Now, you may have an MAS NT already. You may not have an MAS NT, and you may or may not have a Da100 NT. Either way, this is going to be useful for you to see how to perform flow checks if you're interested in the future or if you have one now. So let's get started. What are we going to talk about? Well, just like what I said, the MAS Da100 NT. NT stands for New Technology. The MAS 100 has been out since the mid-1990s, and this is technically the second version that was launched in 2007. And the Da100 NT is also the second version, launched at roughly the same time. So the nice part. Oh, if we can have everybody mute, that would be great. So we're going to talk about flow checks. And what the great part about that is, depending on your needs, you'll be able to check the flow of your MAS NT monthly, quarterly, every 2 weeks. I was in with a customer and I said, hey, you'd be able to check the flow of your air samplers every day. And they just about fell out of their chair and said, that's way, way, way too much work. But it's possible. If you'd like to do it, it's possible. And then we're going to do some calibrations live to show you how it works. So the MAS 100 NT, one of the main reasons that you can calibrate it in your lab, in your facility, is that it has a built-in digital anemometer, and that's here. Is that my mouse showing up? No, yeah, I think it is, okay. And that mass flow sensor is what it's also called. That measures air by mass and not volume. We're gonna get into that in a little bit, but we're able to maintain that 100 liters per minute because of that mass flow sensor. So the air comes here onto the plate. It's pulled by a fan, and the particles are impacted onto that plate and then exhausted. And as the flow is being read through that mass flow sensor, the volume is constantly being adjusted to reach 100 liters per minute. And then combine that with the fact that your air, different pressures and different temperatures affect your air. Instead of measuring air by volume, we're measuring by mass, which allows us to measure the correct amount of a cubic meter, even independent of pressure and temperature. And then also there is a Feller table for higher counts, but we don't have to worry about that, usually in the higher clean room environments. So with the mass flow sensor, we are adapting to any changes that might be happening. You might have a medium that has a little bit less auger. You might have medium that's a little bit higher in auger. The plastic might be a little different. The temperature in the air might be different. We've had people use these in cold rooms. You might be at 5,000 feet, and you're gonna be able to adjust to the pressure because certainly the air is going to be thinner at 5,000 feet. So you're going to be able to compensate for all of those different changes inside of your environment, and also that you exist at like I said, high altitudes or higher temperatures. So you want to make sure that your sampler is able to adjust to these different effects. So Boyle's law, and this is just one example, if you had a 20-degree difference, you would increase by 60 liters. And so if you're reading lower, let's say you're reading out of a cubic meter, you're reading 940 liters, that's obviously a situation you don't want to be in. Now, if you measured more, that's probably okay, but you certainly never want to measure less. And that's what the effect of temperature and pressure can have on your viable sampling. And that's where a mass flow sensor would come into play. So again, here's another example of pressure where Chicago might have a low of 28.7 in millimeters Hg, and then your flow rate would be 95.9 liters per minute. At a high barometric pressure of 30.98, you would have a actual flow rate of 103.54. Big difference of 76.4 liters. So we adjust to make sure that doesn't happen. We're always running at 100 liters per minute, again, because we're running off of mass and not volume. Now, the reason I wanted to show you that was because today we're talking about calibrations and we're talking about mass flow checks. And so that's the main reason behind how we can calibrate and why we're calibrating what we're calibrating. So the Da100 is this little device here that goes on top of your MAS 100 NT. And that Da100 has an accuracy of plus or minus 1%. It's actually quite a bit lower than that. but due to the fact that we can't measure air so precisely because it's constantly moving, that we just say plus or minus 1%. And that's fine for these purposes. There is an automatic calibration feature. It is one link away from NIST traceable. And then also the calibration you'll see doesn't take very long at all. In fact, excuse me one second, the paperwork probably takes longer than the actual calibration. So we have actual liters per minute, standard liters per minute. Standard is when you factor in the temperature and the pressure, and actual is actual, like what we were showing before with Chicago and other places where you might have a fluctuation based off of temperature or pressure. That's actual. So we have internal temperature probes, and you'll see how fast and easy it is. You'll see how fast and easy it is to calibrate. And I always end my slides with this little microbiology. You'll notice these are the months using microbes on chromogenic medium. So, did we end up with any questions so far?
No questions so far, Tim.
No questions so far. Okay, super. Well, at this point, allow me to switch over here. I'm going to turn this off. I'm going to stop presenting. And I'm going to hi, everybody. You see me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Turn that off. Okay, great. Well, allow me to invite my two very highly underpaid and very highly beautiful and wonderful assistants into, let me switch around my camera. Let me switch. There it is. That took a long time. Allow me to invite in my two highly underpaid but beautiful assistants, Whitney and Emily. Hi, girls.
Hello.
This is Whitney Sear, and that's Emily Sear, my two lovely daughters. And Whitney, what do you have? Oh, that looks like an MAS 100 NT. Great, you can go ahead and put that down. So Whitney, what have you been up to this week?
Well, I've been studying Boyle's law, and it's interesting to note how pressure and temperature affects air.
That's really, really interesting. Boyle's law is key to this entire exercise. And this is Emily. Hi, Emily. What do you have? Oh, it looks like the Da100 NT. Why don't you go ahead and set that down? And Emily, what have you been up to this week?
I've been playing Minecraft.
Excellent. Yeah, that sounds about right. Well, thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. You'll still be underpaid. There's nothing we can do about that. All right, let me set this down. I'm going to switch it around again. Great. Okay. So we have here the MAS 100 NT, and everyone can see that. And we have here the Da100 NT. Okay. So this simply fits right on top. No problem, just right on top. And what I want to do is I'm going to start off with my MAS 100 NT. I've got these 4 buttons, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to hold down this button and I'm going to hold down this up arrow at the same time. And you'll notice it opened and it's kind of hard to see. And did it open to the right? Oh, it didn't open to the right. What happens if you don't do it right? It doesn't go to the right menu. So I'm going to do it again. Now, notice it says factory mode and adjustment mode. Everybody see that? And I'm going to go to adjustment mode and I hit select. And that takes me into manual adjustment 3. And this is all in the manual, but I'm going to show you guys. This is manual adjustment 3. There's also manual adjustment 1, manual calibration, automatic adjustment, and calibration. So the most important thing is we're going to have a few things to do. We're going to have to do a 3-point manual calibration, adjustment and calibration. So in the this is a European instrument, and the way that they think of calibration is they think of adjusting it to a known standard, and the calibration is then testing that standard against another known standard. So here's our Da100, which is our standard. So the adjustment is the movement of the sensor value, and the actual calibration is the confirmation of that value in this instrument. So you go through 2 phases for a calibration. And that's important because in North America, we generally don't think like that. We think of one thing, we think of calibration, and that's it. But in this one, adjustment is technically the calibration, but you have a second step. So I'm gonna back this up a little bit. That's pretty good. So I've got my manual adjustment 3, and I just hit select. And then that takes me to the next window that says adjust flow, and I'm going to pull that off. Now we're going to do a 3-point calibration. Adjust flow is 100 liters per minute. So now it's going to start my adjustment. And what this is going to do, we're going to have a 3-point adjustment. We're going to have a 95, a 100, and a 105. And those are the 3 different ranges. That gives us a 3-value range that allows us to calibrate the instrument better. So you'll see here that it's running, and you can probably hear it, and we're looking for a 95. So I use this, the Da100, I press this button, and you'll probably might hear my dog again, but that's the way the world goes these days. Can everyone see that value? Is that too dark?
I cannot see.
Not quite, Tim.
It's dark.
Not quite, it's too dark? Okay. I don't think I can shine it. Let's see. Let's see. You see how? Anyway, it's measuring the flow. So this device is measuring the flow of this instrument, the MAS. The Da100 is measuring the MAS. So I'm going to adjust this. Let's see if that's right. I'm going to adjust this until that reads 95. So I'm going to use this up and down because right now it's reading 101, and I'm just adjusting down. Maybe if I get a little light. There, is that better? So that's reading 97.3. I'm going to go down a little bit more. Is that a little better?
No.
It's
No,
not
it's the
better?
same.
Still too dark.
Okay, let me do a little more light. How about that?
No.
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 Now, this is going to eventually read 95. And so I'm going to take, once this gets to about 95, again, I'm adjusting this. Once it gets to 95, I'm going to take 3 measurements. And all this is doing is turning down the fan that's in here. All we're doing is changing the fan to get to the right speed. And so this is reading right about 95. At this point, I take 3 readings. This is reading every 3 seconds. And I'm going to take 3 readings and average those 3 readings. And so at this point, once it's reading 95, I'm going to hit next. And you'll notice it says enter mean flow. So my average for those readings is 95. So that's fine. You can adjust it up and down, like it says 94.9, 95.1. Either one is fine. Whatever the reading is. And then I hit next. Now you'll notice it changed to 105.01 and to 105.0 liters per minute. And now you'll notice the speed, if you probably didn't hear, the speed of the fan changed. And I've already got this dialed in at 105. So this is good. I don't have to make any adjustments to that value because my MAS is already at the right speed at my upper level. So I take 3 readings every 3 seconds, 105, 105.2, 104.8. Great. So now I'm going to say next. And it's locking in that data. So I say the average flow on that one, again, I average those three numbers and put in my number. So let's say I was right at 105. Then I hit next again. And now it's going to go to 100. So I've got my blowers at 55.4. It's reading 104 still reading a little high. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to lower it. To get down to 100. And that's reading about 100, roughly. Okay, so I take my three readings and I say next. And I averaged it to, sorry, the same thing, you average the numbers and you put the number that you averaged in. And now you'll notice it says sensor successfully adjusted. And that's that adjustment that we talked about. So I hit exit. At this point, you need to go into the calibration. Now I say select and it starts the motor running again. And we're just going to wait a second here. You also want to have your Da100 at room temperature. If you just want it at kind of warmed up to where the electronics are all working correctly. Okay, so now it says, now read flow samples. Okay, so we've got our flow samples, and this is reading 99.8, standard liters per minute 100.7. So I read my three samples. I feel really good. I'm within my plus or minus 2.5%, 100.6. I'm right at 100. In fact, we recommend this to be a little bit higher because if you're running 100 liters a minute, you want to make sure that you get more. If something goes wrong, you want to make sure that it's more, not less. So you want to end up maybe calibrating it to 100.1. We recommend that. So, and that's perfectly normal. So I hit next, and then I say accept calibration, activate immediately. Of course, you want to do that. And then it gives you a calibration. So you could say, do I want to do it every 6 months? I can change this. I want to do it quarterly. And what it does is on that first page, it gives you a reminder that it's due. So most people do it yearly. Some people do it every 6 months. But if you wanted to do it quarterly, you could do it every 3 months too. So I'm going to put it to 12. Okay, great. Now I can exit. And my calibration, let me start this up again. "12 months, this next calibration is due." Okay, so that was, and I'm going to close these here. That was the calibration aspect of the MAS100 with the Da100 NT. So that was, as I said, 5 to 10 minutes. We've been on this call for 20 minutes and it was probably about half that. So it really is about 5 to 10 minutes. It's very easy. You can also do this automatically. There's a cable that connects from the back of the Da100 here into the back of the MAS100. You can see here the port. You can do this automatically with the software. And so you can connect it and it will do the automatic talking back and forth and you won't have to do any adjustments. I prefer the manual just because for me, it's just a little bit more of an involved process. You can do the automatic though, that's totally fine. And that's what a lot of people do. So I've got my unit calibrated and it's up and running and I'm feeling good about it. Now, what about the day-to-day performance test? This doesn't even get, this is even simpler. So I've got my Da100. Let me point that out here. Whoa, sorry. Got my Da100 here, and I've got my MAS100, and I turned it on, and it's at the start menu. So at this point, I just hit start, and I could put my Da100 on top and see what it's reading. And this is under normal conditions. I could even put a plate in here if I wanted to. Again, that's going to be a minor variation. I wouldn't worry about that because we just want to make sure that it's running at the right speed. But if you were in the lab, or if you were, if metrology was using, or let's say you dropped it or something happened to it and you just wanted to know that it was working, you could just pop this right on top. And again, I know that you can't necessarily see the speed. I'm trying, but it's not working that well. It's reading right at 100.6 liters per minute. So right on spec, right at what we calibrated it to. So I know confidently that this instrument, and there's my error message. I know constantly that this instrument is running, even though I just dropped it, I know that it's running correctly because I just did my performance test. So let me add one more thing here. Kind of a funny story. I got this first instrument in. It's a demo unit that we've had. And you'll see that it was due 2012. And my colleague, Michelle, said it would be really great for you to show that this instrument needs to be calibrated. And I said, well, yes and no. And I'm going to show you why. This one, next calibration was 2 years ago, and it's actually probably been too long for that. The reason is, if you have a listen, let's just start it again. Can you guys hear that? That's an instrument that needs to be serviced. So not only does it need calibration, it needs a new fan, and it needs probably a new mass flow sensor because it hasn't been checked out in 8 years. Because it's our demonstration unit. So I wanted to show you guys that if you hear that kind of noise coming from your sampler, contact us right away. It needs service. The fan probably needs to be replaced, and the calibration needs to be performed, and the mass flow sensor probably needs to be replaced too. So with that, I'm going to stop the camera.
We do have a question, Tim.
Close these up. Yeah.
So somebody asked, are there instructions to do pre-checks prior to calibrating?
You know, that's more of just a basic instrument practice. If you want to just do a flow as found, we do an as found, no doubt. You can do an as found, and you should do an as found. You could pop it right on the top, just like the performance check, and just do 3 readings in a row. You could do 5. Some people do more. We say 3. It's just more of a statistics thing at that point, but people do performance as found.
Question, how are pre-checks done before and after calibration? When should they be done?
Pre-checks. Meaning how often should you check your instrument?
I think they mean if there's any airflow blockage or any blockage in the sampling head.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
One of the things you'll want to look at here, and I just went to my computer camera, just make sure that your edges, this is more of a daily maintenance kind of thing. This blue ring, I'm gonna get up close. See that blue ring? That blue ring is your contact point with your head. And that blue ring is what's going to start to wear. And that's also what you'll need to replace. After about 5 years of really consistent use, what's going to happen is your head is going to start to stick more. And so when you do your calibration check, just have a look at that ring. See how the head fits. If your users are saying, I've got to crank this head to pull it off, then this blue ring needs to be replaced. It could be the head too. One of the things we want to check to see is the edge here. Make sure that we don't have any dents, cracks. Make sure that we don't have any warping. These really get beat up. And you're going to want to make sure that this is in round and that it doesn't have any dents or cracks or warps. So yeah, definitely check that out. Make sure you don't have any leaks. I mean, it's not a 100% leak proof because it's metal on metal, but just make sure you don't have a big leak from a big warp or something like that. Did that answer your question, Amber?
We're being asked, how can you retrieve the data that the DA generates?
Yeah, Yasmin, thank you for that question. That's a good question. We have a software program that you can use to calibrate this instrument, and the Da100, the software will generate the certificate. Otherwise, we have a manual certificate that you fill out. You could take pictures and attach the pictures, but the actual data from the DA100 goes into the instrument and calibrates the instrument, and then that data is generated on a certificate, not electronically. It's not an electronic data. It's not 21 CFR Part 11. It's on a paper. It's not still on a piece of paper. Yeah, thank you, Monica. Yes, software is very easy to calibrate. It's very easy. I didn't want to show that for these purposes because I just wanted to show that you could do it with the DA100 and the MAS100 without any software. The software would probably be another demo, but thank you. Yes, Monica, that's true. Amber, you're asking, besides the MAS head and the seal, is there any other pre-checks that we do? Not really. It's a very simple device. So I just hit that button to turn it on, and that's it. When I turn it on, if you want to see the calibration, that might be something to look at to make sure that you're within calibration. But pre-check, really, this is designed to be very simple. So we want to just have you can have your auger plate with your head, or you could use the little calibration device. But most people don't. You could just use a regular plate. And even then, it's not that big of a deal. So I want to just inspect the top. There's no moving parts that you can adjust. There's no other parts that you can change. You can change the battery on this on your own. It's not something I terribly recommend. I would say if you really know what you're doing, there's some companies that really know what they're doing with these and have a lot of training on them. Otherwise, you can't change the battery. But that's it. There's no other service you can do. So this is the contact point. This is everything that gets moved every day. So this is going to be the thing that you check, just to make sure that I don't have any dents or cracks. And that's really it for calibration. On a day-to-day basis, obviously, like I said, with that other instrument that sounded terrible, if you hear something like that, you're going to want to get in touch with us right away, because the sound, that should be the sound. Can you guys hear that? Do you guys hear that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. See how that's nice and smooth? Nice and smooth. Very, very easy. And when you hear this, this is when you know it's not working correctly. I'm going to go right here again too. Totally different sound. And that's the sound of a fan that's going. Great. Did that answer your question, Amber?
Yeah.
Okay, did I see a question about a tube?
Yeah, Amber asked, is there tubing as well that we can check? I'm not, besides the MAS and seal.
Yeah, well, we have a cone adapter that fits right on top here. So it fits and the tube comes off and it goes into a temporary, what's the word I'm looking for? Remote sampling port. So at that tube, you can calibrate that too. Absolutely. We have an instrument at companies where they are going to calibrate it when the tube is, while the tube is on. And so you can calibrate the head to make sure that at that point it's running with that tube that you have at 100 liters a minute. Is that any more questions?
There are no more questions in the box.
Does anyone want to ask live?
Silence.
Okay. Let's see. Yeah, thank you, Amber. They're relatively steady. Again, what I showed was when this is on, you don't want air currents here. You don't want air impacting this flow, because this is a very, very sensitive instrument, and you probably can't see it. It's a magnetic vein, and it is very sensitive. Like I said, its accuracy is less than 1%. So when you're calibrating it, you don't want people coming in and out of the room You don't want air conditioning above you because it's really pretty sensitive. So you'll see it fluctuate. You will actually see it. And it's an interesting practice to wave your hand over top and watch the value of your Da100 change. So when you do your calibration, just have it sit, let everything warm up. And when you punch in your number at the calibration point, at the adjustment point, you'll see it go down to about 105. So you want to be right around 105. And when you calibrate it, you'll be at 104.7, 105.1. It usually should be pretty consistent. But if it's not, if it just can't hold that value, that means that you might have a mass flow sensor that's starting to fail. And that's a key, because if you've had this instrument for, let's say, 5 years, and you use it a lot and you've calibrated it in-house, but you've never sent it out for service, you might end up seeing that you can't hold that calibration, and that just means the mass sensor is starting to go. Yeah, so Yasmin, there are 3 preset values of 95, 100, and 105. That's the 3 value, and that's the one I like because it calibrates it to a low, a middle, and a high, and that's what most people think of when they think of calibration. So those aren't set, but you enter the value of yours. So if I set this for 95 and it gives me values of 96, 95.3, 94.8, I average those and then input it into the MAS 100 NT. What controls during the calibration to ensure there is no interference? Well, Amber, it's okay. I mean, it's air. So we're not talking about chemistry. This is just air. So as long as you are within your plus or minus 2.5, that's what we're calibrating to, is our 2.5. So if I'm at 104.6, 105.1, 105.4, that's why we do an average. And so that average is fine. If you see things, you'll know with interference, Amber, if it's varying wildly and you feel like there's air currents and you can feel that it's not still, you're probably in a spot that has air currents that are interrupting your flow. But generally that's not the case. I mean, some people do it in like a hood, kind of plastic hood, so to control, so there's no airflow at all, and that's fine. I just calibrated it here in my house and I didn't have any issues at all. So it's not like you need to have this, because it's air. We're plus or minus 2.5%. We're not going down like a balance where we're going down to 0.01 grams or anything like that. Is there, Gustavo, my friend, is there any difference between HEPA filter? So if we have a HEPA filter, some instruments you can buy that have a little HEPA filter here for the exhaust. Not necessary, but you can. Calibration's still the same. If you have an instrument with no HEPA filter and you want to add a HEPA filter, then we would recommend calibrating it afterwards. Annette, other samplers have sensors, just not mass flow sensors. So we're the only one that I know of that has a mass flow sensor and measures air by mass and not volume. Yeah, Amber. Yeah, if you feel like, let's say you're calibrating and you're trying to get to 105, oftentimes if your fan is starting to go and you're cranking that value up and up and up and up to a point that you're like, I'm at the top of this sampler and I'm barely reaching 105, there's a good chance the fan is going out. So if you're constantly seeing that you don't have stability in your readings, it might be time for service. But you should, in general, in my experience, if you're calibrating these, you're going to be at least a couple of years before you feel like, and this is, again, daily use, heavy use, before you feel like the mass flow sensor is starting to get out of calibration faster. The adapter is called a cone adapter, and whoever on the call, if you work with Amber, can you please give her some information on the cone adapter? We have pictures too. We can send pictures. It's a little adapter, and you attach a hose, and you put that hose into a space. And we were just talking about this. You could put this also on an isokinetic sampling port, so you can put it in a hood, or you can put it. Some people have used a RABS where this is outside of the RABS and the hose goes inside of the RABS, so that you can remove the plate outside of the RABS and not have to worry about reaching under or reaching through the doors. The cone adapter goes right here, and just the hose. The hose is just the hose with the isokinetic sampling port, or even the hose. They didn't even use a port; they just used the hose. So the head is the exact same. The plate still remains here. The plate. We don't have an adapter where the head is attached and the hose goes to the sampler. It's not like that. It's just the hose with a port, with an isokinetic sampling port. But this is your 300 hole head, and this is the one that's the most common and the one in use right now. Yeah, thank you, Ann. We do have, this was for our portable MAS 100 NT. The DA100 NT calibrates our MH multi-head unit with multiple 4 heads where you can put inside of an isolator. Also, we have the MAS ISO that's used for isolators. Most commonly, it's like sterility isolator, where you have one sampling point, one fixed sampling point. And that's the nice thing about having the MAS family. You have all of your samplers calibrated by one device, and it's only that big. And this gets calibrated by us once a year off of an NIST standard. So your MAS is one link away from the NIST standard, which is really important in the world of calibrations. Yeah, guys, it was 30 minutes. I got no problem if you had to go. If you'd like to ask some more questions, that's no problem. We're here.